Moving on to tonight's speaker, it's the Reverend Diane Stark, as we welcome her back. Wonderful addition to the Coptic Fellowship and also a Unity minister. Originally from Washington, D.C. area, where she graduated from the University of Maryland and has always been interested in teaching, whether it's ideas or academics, as she grew up a preacher's kid. Her mother having a Unity church for 20 years in the D.C. area. And she was ordained in 2006 by Unity Worldwide Ministries and has been the leader of Unity of Muskegon for the past 9 years, where she had this morning's gathering with baptism in the rain she mentioned at the open warm-up at the top, before the top of the hour. Her vision for the future is a world cooperation among all nations and stewardship of the earth that is balanced and holistic, and may that be so. Diane's topic tonight, eternity is all of now, as we do welcome her with her message tonight. Diane.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I so appreciate being asked to speak, and I thank all of you for being here with us and tuning in and listening to this this reflection that I just want to share and I want to impart to you. You know, and I think back of, you know, how did I ever get to this point where I'm a woman advanced in years, and I get to have this fun all the time of sharing with people things of value, things of sacredness, ideas of depth and meaning. I can't think of anything more appealing to me personally as a way to spend my energies and my time. So I am supremely grateful to each and every one of us here, one of you here, and I thank you for all the kindness that you show me all the time. I appreciate it so much. So I came up with this topic, eternity is all of now. I thought of that statement myself, and it means something to me. Maybe it's an impossible contradiction, or maybe it doesn't make any sense, but you know, lately there's been a lot of work in the new spirituality movement, a lot of work about now, you know, the power of now, being in the now moment. What was that one? I forgot. But anyway, the wonderful book, the Be Here Now, Remember to Be Here Now by Ram Dass. That was wonderful, divine, sacred thinking. And the more we are aware, the more broadly and the more expansively we are awake and aware and sensitive to the creation, to consciousness, to the soup that we're swimming in, you know. The greater is our sense of the eternal now, I guess you would say, of the greater is our sense of the perpetual, eternal quality of being. So I don't have to go on and on about that. I've said right now, I've said what I have to say about that. It's just a mind-boggling wonder of sacred awareness to realize what we have available to us in the moment. Would you agree? And all of you have grasped that. I know you have. So I'm going to tell you some stories about it. I don't know why, but it just kept coming across my YouTube screen this week about Margaret Mitchell. Did anybody else see that? Margaret Mitchell, American rebel. Now, this is an example of someone who did not accept the appearance that appeared to her in the moment. And it's like there's a duality to our existence. Have you heard of a book called This Double Thread by Walter Starkey? Came out in the 60s. He was a metaphysician, not affiliated with any religion, but he wrote in this book that there are two modes of consciousness that we're constantly occupying, the finite and the infinite. And therein lies the wonder of our of our lives, and to navigate those waters is an opportunity to just break out of our shell of known reality. So if you think of Margaret Mitchell, the author of the book Gone with the Wind, it's quite an extraordinary story. Here's an example of someone who did not accept the finite reality that appeared to her in her life. She was kicked out. She was born in Atlanta in 1900, and she was kicked out of the ladies, whatever, the coming out society, because she did a tango at her debutante party. And then later on, when the movie premiered in Atlanta of the book she had written, she didn't even go to the debutante's ball because she got to have the last laugh with them. But that just shows you what a rebellious, independent spirit she had. And how did she come up with this idea or this novel, Gone with the Wind? That's what, to me, is so extraordinary, that shows us a glimpse of how we manage the finite and the infinite. And we open up our lives to be in a moment that is so expansive. You could call it eternal. So what happened with her was that she, as a little girl, she didn't want to go to school at all. She said to her mother, I don't want to learn that stuff. What's the point? I'm not interested in arithmetic or reading or history or science, nothing like that. It's not interesting. So her mother plopped her in a vehicle and drove around to all the burned out houses that were left from the Civil War. And she told her daughter, these people lost everything. And they didn't survive because they had nothing within themselves to fall back on. They had not taken the effort and the time and the care to acquire within themselves strengths and resources. And it was that experience with her mother that she derived the whole plot of Gone with the Wind from. She says that if there's any theme to it, it's about survival and how people who have what's the word? Okay, I'm forgetting the word. People who have pluck survive, and people who don't have the inner resources and don't know where to find them don't. But as she went on through her life, she was able to transcend certain barriers of society. For instance, there was such a racial barrier that even when the movie Gone with the Wind opened, they couldn't have the black actress Hattie McDaniel couldn't even stay in Atlanta. Nevertheless, Margaret Mitchell managed to transcend a racial barrier by being a secret benefactor to Morehouse College and providing thousands and thousands of dollars to educate Black professionals, medical students, and college students. No one knew about this until 50 years after she died. Because if it had been known, it was thought it would be dangerous. There would be threats of violence against her. She never even met the president of Morehouse College. Only through a letter that he sent to her, and she used to answer all of her letters personally in writing. That she said she answered every letter with a reasonable question. So the president of Morehouse College sent her a letter that said, would you be willing to pay $70 for the tuition of one student for a year? And she sent back a check for $70, and she said, I'd like to hear more about your ideas of education for Black Americans. And that conversation expanded into her supporting and being a benefactor to innumerable students at Morehouse College to become educated. And she actually paid for the first Black hospital in Atlanta. So she broke out of the finite appearances of the moment and into the infinite possibilities of the eternal now, I think. That's how I look at it. It's kind of poetic. It's not really too logical, but that's what I want to talk about, is how we can free ourselves into a dimension of reality that is so beautiful, so awe-inspiring, that we need never be despondent, that we need never be downhearted or depressed. Another example of that, which flows right out of the story of Gone with the Wind, which, by the way, is the only novel that Margaret Mitchell ever wrote. And she didn't think it was any good, but one of her girlfriends said, oh, you could never have anything published. It made her so bad that she grabbed up the manuscript and gave it to this publishing representative who happened to be going through town. And after 3 days, she contacted him and said, I want that back. I want that back. I'm so embarrassed. And he started reading it and he said, no, you ain't getting it back. And then it came out in 1929, and it was the most popular novel, really, of the 20th century. And it was the only thing she ever did. She said she wrote it from the last chapter forward. Did anybody ever hear that before? She wrote it backwards because she wanted to create the story so intricately, and she knew exactly how she wanted to tell it. So anyway, but it out of that flows the story of Hattie McDaniel, the first Black actress to get an Academy Award. And here's another person who just did not accept the finite appearances that confronted her. She saw an infinite possibility. She saw a different reality. And she had so many instances where she was held down because of racism. But she didn't find it personally offensive. She just found it to be, something to deal with of the times, and something that was totally illogical, but couldn't be helped. She didn't get upset about it, And she grew up in a family where her father, he said, well, none of my children are ever going to work as domestics, so we're going to create a vaudeville show as a family. So from the time she could walk, she was in vaudeville. She was on stages, performing everywhere. But right about the time that she turned in her mid-20s, vaudeville collapsed and gave way to moving pictures. And so they all went out to Hollywood. And for the first time, she had to work as a domestic. And then she would go to the calls for extras on a certain day. I think it was Wednesdays. And she'd work as an extra where they needed Black people in the scenes, like Natives and, all those old movies that have hordes of Black people in certain scenes. She did that. But eventually she broke through and got into real movies with real parts. And she secured the trust and admiration of some key performers. For instance, Clark Gable had been in a movie with her and he knew how good she was. And he was the one who suggested her for the role in Gone with the Wind. And as soon as they saw her audition, they didn't audition anybody else. They said, she's the one. So the interesting thing about her life is that, to me anyway, is that her career accelerated to going on radio and then being on television, but her health failed, and she did pass away after just a few appearances on television. But her Academy Award was given to Howard University, which is a Black university in Washington, D.C. And it has disappeared. No one knows where it is. I love a mystery, And I think that's testament to how precious the idea of her life is to so many people, especially minority people. But my story for you tonight, the story about myself and the you know, the experience of eternity, time and eternity. Well, I was cleaning out my closet this week and I got to the bottom of it and I actually found my address book. My Christmas card list address book. So it says Christmas card list in the front and it's current. It's got all these addresses written in it. One of those old fashioned, you know, little booklets that we all used to use for addresses. And there was a piece of paper stuffed in there that fell out with the name of a person on it. And her name, I'll call her Marianne Foster, little Marianne Foster. That's not her real name because it has to be confidential. But this piece of paper fell out with her name on it and her address. And I remembered that I had found this girl last year. And the reason I needed to find her was back when I went out to Kansas City in 1997. I moved from Maryland to Missouri because my kids were grown up and gone and I wanted to be close to the Unity work. And I got a job in Silent Unity and the other employees in there were, a lot of them were ministerial students. And one of them stood up in our early meeting one morning and said, my wife works at a children's home and she says they need volunteers over there. So I went over there and asked if I could be a volunteer for them. And they gave me a 16-page background check form. And I filled the whole thing out. And I figured, well, I may hear from them in the next century by the time they follow up on all these contacts. And about a year later, a year and a half later, I happened to be in the same office, the office of the director of this children's home. It was not an orphanage. It was a place where children went when they were displaced, when they for some reason couldn't be in their own home and they had nowhere else to go. So I was in there and I swear I can't remember why, but it wasn't about this volunteer service. But the director remembered. He said, oh, you know, your background check just came in and you're cleared to be a volunteer here. Would you like to be a special friend to one of our children here? We could use you right now. And I said, well, okay. So he brought in this little 7-year-old girl, little Marianne Foster. And she was very nervous and shut down and her head was down and her shoulders were all tense and her hands were almost shaking. And she just sat down and she started to write on a piece of paper, just scribble things and doodle, you know. And I said, would you like to learn how to write the word love? And she just looked up and her eyes just went wide. She looked up and said she would. So we started with that and we went on from there and I was able to cultivate a nice friendship with her. And I found out that the reason she was displaced was because her family had gone to the emergency room. One of the people in the family needed emergency treatment and the whole family went to the hospital. But when they went home, they forgot to take her with them. So she came to the attention of the authorities because of that. And then when I didn't hear any more information than that, but when her home situation was looked into, they never let her go back to it. So she was traumatized. She was very unhappy that she'd been removed from, taken away from her family. She didn't quite understand it. And so I just tried to distract her, comfort her, share nice times with her. And it came around to Thanksgiving. The whole time I knew her was only about 10 weeks. But it came to be Thanksgiving, and when I went to get her, the director told me that there had been an incident where her case went to court. She was in the courthouse. She knew her family was there, but she was held back from going to them because they didn't want her to be attached to them because their parental rights were being severed at that court date. And this was a heartbreaking thing for me to go through, for me to witness her. But yet I learned so much at a profound level. We're driving down the road, and she says, I went to court and I saw my mother, but they wouldn't let me go to her. And I said, well, honey, they don't want you to be attached to her. That's why they don't want you to see her. And she said, she poured out crying. She said, but I have to be attached to her so I can be happy. And that, I didn't try to fix it. I didn't try to explain it. I just felt it with her. And I learned a profound truth about human nature in that. So later on, I realized that all of her belongings would fit into a pillowcase. Her clothes, her shoes, her toys, everything. And so I asked her, would she like to have a Bible? Now, I had learned that she was going to be placed for adoption. They had found a couple who wanted to adopt her. It was a college professor, husband and wife, and they lived in Manhattan, Kansas. And I was not going to see her much longer. And so I asked her, would you like to have a Bible? I see you don't have one. She said, oh, I want a Bible so much. I would love that. So I asked her, what kind of a Bible would you like? I was thinking like, a red cover or King James Version, whatever. She says, a Holy Bible. So I got her a Holy Bible. And I think it was the last time I saw her, we had the Bible and she was writing in the inside cover, this was a gift from my friend, Diane Stark. I will never forget her. And I said, honey, if we do get separated, I'll find you. When you grow up, I'll find you. Okay? Don't worry. So we did get separated. I wrote a letter to her adoptive parents saying I would be happy to continue being her friend, and they never answered. And so the years went by, and every so often I would search for her name on the internet, and I didn't find anything all these years. That was 1998. Now it's 2020. And I did search for her maybe almost every year. And finally, just last year, I found her name on Facebook with a third last name. And I looked at her Facebook page and I saw that she had gotten married and had just had a baby. And I sent a message to her that said, I don't know if you're the girl I'm looking for, but we were friends when this, I didn't say you because I didn't assume it was her. I said, we were friends when she lived at a children's home in Kansas City in 1998. And she wrote back and said, yes, I did that. I was there. I was at that children's home in 1998. And that was a very traumatic time in my life, and I don't remember very much of it. But I just want you to know that, I'm very happily married, and I just had a baby, and I'm so happy. But I'm sorry, I don't remember you at all. And that's okay. Because I learned that she was happy, that she had overcome her tragedies and her traumas and found a happy life. Isn't that wonderful? So I guess my message to you today is that in the flow of events and in the experience of time, we can change things. We can evolve. We can manifest. We can experience fulfillment. And that's all we need to know. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Diane. Another incredible story, or stories as you share them tonight, and eternity is now. I had a chance to tour Margaret's home when I went to Atlanta, and it was
Oh,
neat to
yeah?
see the desk where she probably wrote Gone with the Wind, and it was you kind of feel the energy there. So I'm hearing your story tonight kind of took me back to the place where she was at. It still exists. It's kind of tucked in the middle of Atlanta, downtown. So thank you for sharing that tonight.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure and an honor to share with you folks, and I appreciate your listening. I appreciate you.
Diane, did you share with this girl that you were the one that gave her the Holy Bible? And
I didn't say, did you have your Bible? I didn't.
because that might have been a little glimpse into her past.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, would have
That's a
remembered.
good idea. Yeah. I can always, reach out to her.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't close the door on our relationship.
Did your name ring a bell with her? No?
She
Okay.
hardly remembered that period of her life at all. Anything about it, because
Yeah.
you see, she was actually, having her parental bond broken
Right.
and having to replace it with a stranger
Mhm.
again, a new parents. And I'm sure that she had a lot of therapy, really good therapy.
Yeah, she was 7 years old.
Yes, she was 7.
Yeah, to remember what we did when we were that young. I know it was traumatic for her, but she probably wanted to erase a lot of her memories from that time period.
Yeah.
Mm. But I'm sure you helped her.
Yeah, just to get through a few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
just to get by. But that to me, that opened up so much of our instinctual patterning for her to say, I have to be attached so I can be happy.
Mhm.
Wow. That's just the human condition there in a nutshell. And for her to be able to articulate it, I thought was pretty marvelous.
Mhm. I was thinking Stockholm syndrome when you said that.
And Diane, it's interesting that she said that in order to be happy, she needed to be attached to her mother. And yet when you connected with her recently, she said that she's married and is very happy. So the attachment and the happiness are still a real strong belief in her life.
Yes.
And she's attached now to her child. She has a
Yes.
baby.
Yeah.
Any other comments, suggestions for Diane tonight and her presentation?
Thank you. I'm too choked up to talk.
You are a
Well, I
gifted
mean,
storyteller.
You sure are.
Yes, wonderful story. You bring tears to my eyes each time you speak.
But I just wonder, is really all of now eternity? Is that really true?
Sure.
Is that experience valid? Or is that just poetry? Is that just kind of,
Well, do any of us know, really? They say that what we're experiencing now is, it happened in the past and the future has already happened, and we were in the future and we've been in the past, so I don't know.
good.
I don't know, but
That's good.
And then there are theories that we really are traveling in different dimensions and different timelines. So
Yeah.
sure, anything's possible.
But look at the Webb telescope. We're
Yeah.
seeing things from many, 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 many eons ago, a long time ago. We're seeing them now.
Well, this man who reads the Akashic records, that's sort of mind blowing because, it just implies that things, once something ever happened, it's always perpetually still happening.
Mhm.
I thought your presentation was wonderful because you hit us right in the heart.
Oh, thanks, John.
You could feel the love coming from you, bring this wonderful message. And when you hit somebody in the heart, it's a life changer like that. And that's what we all have to learn. Really think about heart to heart with these wonderful ideas and concepts. And the world becomes a better place because of it. Well, thanks for the beautiful job, Diane. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you so much, John.
I want to know, are you in your new church?
What now?
Are you in the new church building?
We have nothing. We've reserved the community room of the fire department, which is free actually,
Oh,
on Sundays beginning in August. But for now, we have an outdoor gazebo at a public park, which we met at this morning in the rain. And my hair is still wet. But it seems to make everybody very jolly that we're having to be so unattached to our underpinnings of security.
when will you be able to occupy your building?
We don't have a building. We have made no decision.
Oh,
We have not come to agreement. There is,
how long is the building going to be available?
I don't know, but in the meantime, we're attempting to change our bylaws so that we would be able to make a decision with only 2/3 of a majority instead of 3/4, which is really 2/3 is the pretty much standard of most bylaws templates. But we have the 3/4. We couldn't pass our last motion to purchase this one building that I think would be good for us, but it was only 24 yes and 15 no, so we didn't have the 75% majority that we needed to spend over $25,000. So we're trying to change our bylaws so we won't be stuck never being able to make a decision. But in the meantime, we're just at large.
I would like to add something, if I might. I really appreciated the talk tonight too, Diane. A lot of times, as a person who's a teacher, which you and I both are to some degree,
Yeah,
you don't know how you've helped a person, or you don't know, and that's part of, I think, the purpose of the service that we do, is just to get the right information or to help somebody over a hump or whatever it is. You described it beautifully tonight. And it's almost like a special blessing you got because you were able to actually touch back with her. Whether she remembered or not doesn't really matter, because it's alive and the nowness is in your heart. So I think, yes, now is everything, and it is always ongoing. We as humans kind of tend to put our little boundaries around it. But I think it's much more fluid and flexible than that. And I just wanted to also add to the Spiritualist Church, we just did our bylaws too. 2/3 is a good number.
Ha, okay, good.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Diane.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Lord Joy.
You bet.
I just wanted to say that that was a very interesting talk, Diane. Your talks are always interesting. And what it made me think about is I've had a number of experiences similar to your experience with the 7-year-old child. Even my daughter, who was adopted as an older child, as a teenager, was very attached to her family who had not wanted her. So also I was a big sister with big brothers and big sisters. And a lot of years passed, I wondered whether any of that had been really meaningful. And also for about 20 years, I worked with handicapped children and had those children, not just for 1 year of school, but for many years. And years later, wondered where they were or whether anything I had done with them was meaningful. But what it reminds me of with your talk is with the infinite and the now, there is only now, but it is infinite. And it doesn't matter really, because we all know that in this physical existence, our ideas of time are not really, it's just what we perceive it in this physical realm. The only thing that's really infinite and the only thing that's really now is the love. And your story reflects that. And whether the child remembered you or whether it seemed meaningful, the love was there. And I'm thinking about all the things that I did over the years. The love was there, and that is the infinite part. So it doesn't really matter whether anything that we did is going to be remembered by anybody in the future, with the child or the adult or whoever we've dealt with. Because the love is infinite, and that's really the time. So anyway, that all made me, I thought about all of that while you were talking. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. That's marvelous.